And we're back again. We're going to do the second worksheet for this week's labs. And this one is about coolant. So let's get busy. On this one, we're going to use my vehicle again. So we'll put my information in. 97 Chev. Actually, it's a GMC Chevy, same thing. And it's May 1st. My wife's birthday tomorrow. VIN number I'm not going to worry about. So the first thing we're going to do, and this has only got 6 items on it as well. So we're going to check the engine coolant temperature, or find where the coolant temperature sensor is. Then we're going to locate the engine coolant system bleeder valve, if it has one. And then we're going to check the recommended coolant, and I'll show you where to find that information. Then we're going to check engine uses, so is it conventional flow, is it reverse flow, or what to do with that. And then the thermostat rating, how many degrees Fahrenheit, and the thermostat, where is it located. All right, I've got the owner's manual, I've got my check sheet, we're ready to get started. The first thing on the item is to find where the ECT is. Now, if you watched my engine walk around video where I showed you the engine component locations, I mentioned several times that if you follow the upper radiator hose, whoops, dropped my pen down there. Follow the upper radiator hose down here, you'll find it comes to a housing. This one, underneath this housing is where your thermostat usually sits. And right next to the thermostat is almost always your coolant temperature sensor. So what you look for is you look for a plug with probably 2 wires hooked up to it. That's going to be your coolant temperature sensor. So there it is right there. It's located right next to the thermostat housing. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to look for a bleeder valve. Now the bleeder valve is usually, I didn't talk about it when we talked about the coolant chapter, but on a lot of vehicles, the high point in the cooling system, which in this particular one here is the upper radiator hose. That's the that's the highest point going up here to the radiator. So right up here on the thermostat housing, or on the highest point, a lot of times there is a bleeder valve where you can bleed the air out of the cooling system. This vehicle does not have one. So if it did have one, it would probably be located right here. But that's what a bleeder valve is. So this particular vehicle does not have one. Next thing we need to do is we need to find out what type of coolant this vehicle takes. Now this coolant, or the type of coolant, is listed in the back of the owner's manual, and I looked it up to save time. So right here in the owner's manual it says coolant 50-50 mixture, and you want to use Dexcool. So that's the type of coolant that we're going to be using, and so that makes that one real easy. So over here we're going to write down Dexcool, and then the next one is looking to see if the engine uses conventional coolant flow, reverse flow, or otherwise. So I don't have any service information at home. I don't have access to Mitchell, ProDemand, or AllData. I don't have that information at home. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to kind of look and see if you can determine what your radiator flows like. First of all, if you look at the radiator, right down here you've got a plastic reservoir tank, and then you can kind of see right here on the fan shroud where it hooks up, where the plastic hooks up to the aluminum radiator. So that means that the coolant is going to actually flow across this way in the cooling system, in the radiator. If your plastic tank is sitting on top of the radiator, and then the side of the radiator tank, or the side of the radiator does not have a tank on it, then that means your coolant flows this way through the radiator. Next thing to do, and this engine's already hot, so I can't do it right now on this engine, but when you're warming up your engine and making sure that the engine comes up to temperature, feel the upper radiator hose, and then if you can, feel the lower radiator hose. And so on this one, the lower radiator hose is down here. Now you have to be really careful when you do this so that you don't get your hands in the way of the belt or the tensioner or the fan or something like that. So be very, very careful if you reach down to try and feel the lower radiator hose. If your radiator, if the upper radiator hose warms up first, then what that means is the coolant is flowing from the bottom through the engine and out through the top. If your lower radiator hose warms up first, then that means your coolant is flowing from the top of the radiator down through the engine and into the bottom, and then it comes up through the radiator. So that's one way to tell. And so if it's a conventional flow, then that means it flows from the radiator to the block to the cylinder heads and then back to the radiator. I would say probably about 80% of all cars, this is what's going to happen. And so if it's a reverse flow, that means it flows from the radiator to the cylinder heads to the block and then back to the radiator. That's if you're... So on this one, the next spot down here is the thermostat rating. So it wants to know how many degrees Fahrenheit your thermostat should be and where's the thermostat located. First thing we can do is we can look and see where the thermostat is located just by following the upper radiator hose right down here where these bolt, there's a bolt here and there's a bolt right there. Take those bolts off and the thermostat's going to be located right here. So that's where your thermostat is located on this vehicle. Some vehicles the thermostat's located down underneath, and you have to follow the radiator hose to find out where your thermostat's located. Now on the thermostat rating, I want to show you some information here. This is in the owner's manual, and this is under the maintenance type section 6 in this particular one. It gives you a lot of information on the coolant. So it talks about Dex Cool, how often you should change it, and so it's designed for the vehicle for 5 years, 150,000 miles. That tells you what the given freezing protection should be, minus 34, 265 degrees. So if this is your boiling point protection, 265 degrees, you should be operating well below that. That's why I'm saying somewhere probably around 200, maybe 210, 220 degrees maximum. That would be what my guess would be. And then this talks a little bit more about coolant. And then if we go over the page, it talks about your overflow reservoir. And if you notice, here's my overflow reservoir. And it looks like I'm a little bit overfull. And the reason I'm overfull is because I keep adding fluid to it because I do know I do have a leak. And so I just want to keep coolant in there just to make sure I don't run dry. So anyway, this talks about the reservoir, where it's located, and all this kind of stuff. And then the pressure cap. This actually tells you what PSI your cooling system is rated to. So this one here, you should have a 15-pound cap on it, and it's a pressure type cap, talks about how it works. And then it talks about the thermostat. And the thermostat is controlled, the engine temperature is controlled by the thermostat and keeps in the cooling system. The thermostat stops flow of the coolant through the radiator until the coolant reaches a preset temperature. Now sometimes in your owner's manual it actually tells you what the temperature is. And that's what your thermostat rating would be. The thermostat rating is where the thermostat starts to open up. So if you have, say, a 198 degree or 195 degree thermostat, then that's when the thermostat starts to open up, and it'll be fully open when the temperature is a little bit higher than that. So, but anyway, so that's when we mark down where the thermostat's located. So let's mark off our worksheet and we'll be finished with this. So we go back through and look at this worksheet. We've got, angle the camera a little bit better so you can see it. So we found the location near the thermostat. And we found, let's see, locate the engine cooling bleeder valve. Doesn't have one, so I'm just going to write none there. And we use Dex Cool in this particular vehicle. And then on this, the engine uses conventional flow. And the thermostat rating, I don't know for sure what it is because my book didn't tell me and I don't have access to all data. But I do know the maximum temperature is 165 or 265. So I'm going to guess that this is right around 200 to 220, and I'm going to put a question mark there because I'm guessing that this is what my operating temperature is, but I don't know that for sure. Then the thermostat is located at the inlet of the water pump or at the outlet side of the water pump. And so this is going to be, that's one thing I didn't talk about, is the inlet and the outlet of the water pump. So the water pump is actually located right down here below this pulley that I'm pointing to with my pen. And the inlet is going to be right down, you can't really see it from here. But anyway, that's where the inlet is. The outlet is going to be down there on the lower radiator hose. So the thermostat on this one is actually located on the inlet of the water pump. So we'll come back over here, and the thermostat's going to be on the inlet side. So the inlet side of the water pump is usually the top side. The outlet side is usually the bottom side, so it goes down to the lower radiator hose. So hopefully, like I say, this won't take you very long to go through. It gives you an opportunity to get outside, enjoy the weather before it starts raining, and give you a little bit of hands-on that you can do. So hopefully you have fun with this.